Today on Inside Utah Politics, the primary election just 2 days away now. We're taking a look at everything you need to know to make your vote count. We're also going to break down some of the key congressional and state legislative races. And Utah's economy is booming, and a local organization is working behind the scenes to keep that momentum rolling. We're checking in with the Economic Development Corporation of Utah.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Good Sunday morning, and thanks so much for joining us for Inside Utah Politics. I'm Glenn Mills. We begin this morning with the State Director of Elections, Justin Lee. Justin, great to have you on the show. You've been on many times before, and we always appreciate your time.
Always good to be here.
Here we go again. Primary election time. Let's talk registration, because the deadline to register, it has passed, but all hope is not lost.
That's right. All hope is not lost. The legislature enacted Election Day registration this last legislative session. So if someone missed a deadline, if someone doesn't know if they're registered to vote, go to the polls on Election Day and you'll be able to vote.
Okay, so you can register to vote on Election Day, but what do you need to make sure to bring with you to be able to get it done properly?
Absolutely. So you want to bring proof of your identification, and usually two pieces are best. Something like your driver's license, something with your picture on it, and then something that shows you live where you say you live, a bank statement, utility bill, something like that to give us your identification and your address.
Now, we're talking primary elections, so with the Republican Party, you have to be affiliated with the party to be able to vote, but you can even do that on Election Day as well?
For some voters, if you're currently unaffiliated, you can affiliate on Election Day and vote in the Republican primary. If you're affiliated with another party, Democrat, Constitution, Libertarian, whatever it is, you can't change party registration at this point. But if you're unaffiliated, go to the polls on Election Day, affiliate with the Republican Party, and you'll be allowed to vote.
But the Democratic primary is open, correct?
That's right. Anybody can vote.
So what does
in the
that mean for voters?
So anybody can vote. If you're, regardless of which party you're in, if you want to vote in a Democratic race in your area, you can vote. Now, it's important to note you can only vote in one party's primary. So you can't vote in the Democrats and the Republicans and whatever else there may be. You've got to pick one, but the Democrats are open.
This same-day voter registration, we ran it as a pilot program for a few years. What do you make of how it worked? Is it a good thing, and were people taking advantage of it?
It was. It was very interesting. We had several county clerks, particularly at the beginning, who thought this is going to be an administrative nightmare. We're going to see, a huge wave of people coming. What we saw is most of the people that came to register to vote on Election Day were the people who were voting provisionally in the past, which means they usually thought they had registered to vote. They hadn't for some reason, or they'd gone to the DMV and it hadn't been transferred through, and they ended up registering and voting that way. So the county clerks liked it. Administratively, we saw it as a good kind of safety net in case something fell through the cracks in the system, and people were able to vote, which we always like.
Let's talk about mail-in ballots, because a huge swing in our counties, most of them doing it now, 27 out of 29. Talk to us about the important deadlines that are involved with that mail-in ballot that many of us may have still sitting on the kitchen counter. Sure.
So the biggest deadline is that on Monday, the day before the election, you want to get that thing postmarked if you're going to send it in the mail. Postmarking is due the day before the election. The thing people want to be aware of different post offices will postmark at different times.
We've had a problem with this in the past.
We have. We've run into it in primaries. We've had that a couple of years ago, where a post office, may be open, they may not really be open anymore past 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. They're not postmarking anymore. So you want to look at the big blue box outside your post office or walk it in and make sure someone physically postmarks that so you don't miss that deadline.
Another option would be a drop box. Those are located all across the state as well.
That's right. Counties have drop boxes. Sometimes they're at city halls, sometimes they'll be at the county offices or just various locations. So go to the county websites, look that up. You'll have a chance to get that ballot in there, even if you may have to drive a little further than the post office.
Talk about what we have seen as far as turnout is concerned once we started bringing mail-in ballots to the state of Utah.
Turnout has gone up, particularly in small turnout elections. So primary elections, historically, not a huge turnout. You may see an 80% turnout for a presidential general election in November, but 20% or less during a primary election. What we saw in municipal elections and also in primaries in the past is it goes up. We're seeing 30–40% turnout with a by-mail election. One of the reasons that we think is people get a ballot in the mail and they forgot there was an election until they saw that ballot, and it's probably the best reminder you can have.
Yeah, and you have it daily as long as it sits in sight. We talked about it already, 2 counties not participating in vote by mail. What are those?
So Emery County and Carbon County are doing traditional polling places primarily. Now, a voter could request an absentee ballot in those counties, but it's not their primary way of voting. So you'll want to look for your voting location on Election Day there.
Okay. And for the vote by mail counties, also Election Day options.
Yep, every county is going to have a way to vote on Election Day. Again, if you forgot to turn in your ballot and you missed the postmark deadline, you can always walk it in. You know, a lot of counties like to call it a fast pass. You walk in, you just drop your ballot and you go. But if you want to vote the traditional way, if you'd rather vote on the machines, then there's going to be polling locations available for everybody on Election Day.
Have you seen a lot of people kind of holding on to that traditional Election Day, you know, going to the polls? It's what I've always done, it's what I want to keep doing.
You know, some people like that right at first, but then a lot of people have kind of been converted, for lack of a better term, over to the by-mail ballot.
It's very convenient.
It's very convenient. It gives you time to look at races. You know, you may not have known there was a county commission race, and you get that ballot, you can become informed about it. There's no excuse not to look stuff up with the internet nowadays and find stuff out. So most people seem to be very comfortable with the change.
Okay, so you talked about the legislation this year that brought us same-day registration, but also we have some new age limits. Talk about that.
Yeah, this is a great piece of legislation. A voter who is 17 now, but will be 18 by the general election, can vote in the primary. So if you've got a teenager that they're 17 but will be 18 before the election in November, they can get in there, and especially with Election Day registration, go to the polls on Election Day, get registered, and their vote will be counted.
Okay. For people with any questions, not sure where to vote, what they need to do, what's the best resource for them?
Vote.utah.gov. Vote.utah.gov, you can find your election, what's on your ballot, you can find your polling place, you can track your ballot, get all the election things you need.
And we have various races pretty much throughout the entire state.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a statewide Republican primary, there's some, you know, local Democratic races, there's some local school board races, commission races, all across the board. So if you don't know if you have something, go to the website, check it out, and it'll tell if you have a race you can vote on.
All right, setting the stage for November. We, as always, appreciate your time helping us get ready for the big day, just a couple days away now.
Glad to be here.
Still to come on Inside Utah Politics, we're going to take a closer look at some of those big races that voters will actually be deciding on Tuesday. But first, the deal to bring Facebook to Eagle Mountain and other projects the Economic Development Corporation of Utah is working on.